It might be tough to remember, but the Patriots really had it going in early 2022. The vibes high through the roof. They're coming off a Pro Bowl rookie season from Mac Jones. They have found the Brady replacement. They made the playoffs. It didn't go so hot, but we have our future. Going into that 22 draft, Patriots fans knew if this was going to be any kind of renaissance, was actually going to happen, they were going to need to get some key pieces from this very draft. You had exactly what you wanted. You had good veterans, guys like Matthew Judon, Kendrick Bourne, Hunter Henry, all over the roster. You had your franchise quarterback on a rookie deal. Sound familiar? It's the greatest luxury in football. Having your guy, your franchise quarterback, cheap. And instead of getting the pieces for another dynasty, they got the worst Bill Belichick draft of all time. I know people love to talk about Bill's drafting record, and it's really not even close to as bad as people think. In fact, I saw someone on Twitter today tweeting out all the first-team All-Pros that Bill Belichick drafted. And it was like, wow, in 20 years, he only drafted 8 first-team All-Pros. I'm like, yeah, that's a really tough thing to do. First-team All-Pros, like there's 22 a year, right? Okay. Bill Belichick, non-special teams drafted players that would go on to be first-team All-Pros as Patriots, which I think is fair. Richard Seymour, Matt Light, Asante Samuel, Vince Wilfork, Logan Mankins, Gerard Mayo, Rob Gronkowski. Belichick basically drafted one a year for 5 years and then went 14 years without, except for the fact that 2 were in 01, 1 was in 03, 1 was in 04, 1 was in 05, 1 was in 08, and Gronkowski was in 2010. Those are great players. Find any other coach in the league right now who's drafted that many first-team All-Pros in that short a span. And oh yeah, not for nothing, but when you do have the greatest player in the history of football, you don't necessarily need to go out and draft All-Pro guys every year for 15 years. Julian Edelman did not make an All-Pro team. Devin McCourty did not make an All-Pro team. Dante Hightower did not make an All-Pro team. I think those guys ended up doing pretty well for you. Just because they didn't draft a first-team All-Pro. Like, I think the Belichick drafts are blown way out of proportion, man. When you look at the seeds of the dynasty teams, first or second, there's a lot of Belichick draft picks in there. Seymour, Wilfork. You go up to, obviously, Gronkowski, McCourty, Hightower, Patrick Chung. And then some of the great players that the other teams didn't realize their talent, and Belichick made them into Pro Bowls, all-pro players. Mike Vrabel, special teamer with the Steelers. Wes Welker, 4 straight All-Pros after being a special teamer with the Dolphins. So this is my quick spiel about being like, you're wrong for the most part. Those of you Patriots fans who are like, Belichick was never good at drafting. And definitely those of you who are not Patriots fans who follow the NFL, because that's been the narrative. But he's not bad at drafting. All that to set up for what I'm about to give you in 2022. The absolute disaster class of Bill Belichick's career and kind of kickstarted the end of it. Let's just say that. They reached, they whiffed, and 3 years later, there's only one player from that draft class that is still on the team. Congratulations, Marcus Jones. Can I get a round of applause for Marcus Jones? The only Patriot that was drafted in 2022 that is still a New England Patriot. Without any further ado, let's take a real deep dive into how this became the beginning of the end of the Patriots aura. Because in the first round, all the Belichick constants were on display. They traded back and they got a lineman. Like, that's so classic Patriots. But this wasn't Nate Solder. No, this was strange. Literally. You see what I did there? They picked a guard out of Chattanooga in the first round, 29th overall. Cole Strange was projected to go anywhere from the mid-40s to the mid-60s. And you remember, Sean McVay was literally laughing at the pick on the Rams draft night special. admitting to their fans he did research on Cole Strange to see if he'd be there at LA's pick at 105. Instead, Bill drafted him 29th overall. And actually, the early returns on Cole Strange were pretty good. But flash forward to 2024, and Cole Strange is going through a position change to center just to see if he can crack the lineup for the worst offensive line in all of football, maybe the worst offensive line in the last 10 years. And he sucked at that too. He was cut yesterday, meaning all the frat stars who rock the Strange 69 jerseys are going to be flocking to Foxborough and the Pro Shop for the half-price sale. Cole Strange, 29th overall. It doesn't get much better. The second round broke my heart in this draft. It really did. I was pleading with the Patriots to take one of the star players from my alma mater, Baylor. Baylor had a great season in 2021, highlighted by one of the best defenses in all of college football, littered with draft-eligible players. I was dying for the Patriots to take either Jaywood Petrie or Terrell Bernard. Instead, they looked at Baylor's offense, or more specifically, they looked at the 40 times at the Combine, and they picked Tyquan Thornton over George Pickens after trading up to get him. I was hoping Thornton wouldn't fall into that nasty luck Bill has with drafting receivers in the second round. Like he's straight out of central casting for that. Obvious deficiencies, red flags, route tree problem, very skinny. How physical could he be as a blocker? All of that. I was hoping he wouldn't fall into that Patriots second round trap for wide receivers. I was really hoping he wouldn't turn into another Bethel Johnson. You remember Bethel came from A&M, another school in Texas, and was a lot like Tyquan. Skinny, but fast as lightning, man. If he could just get open, he can beat any safety clean in this league. Problem is, there's more to the game than that. 3 years later, I wish he turned into Bethel Johnson. I really did. In 28 games over 3 seasons with the Patriots, he amassed a grand total of 39 catches on 76 targets for 128 total yards and 2 touchdowns in 3 years, going from 13 games played to 9 to 6. Just wasting away right in front of us for a guy they traded up to get in the second round. I was a sucker. I had the jersey. I was really hoping that would be good. That's your deep ball threat for Mac Jones, by the way. That was it. Of course, at the time, we didn't know that was an oxymoron. There's no such thing as a deep threat for Mac Jones, unless it's college football and the guy's winning the Heisman Trophy, Devontae. But that's what you got. You had Devontae Smith for him in college. You gave him Tyquan Thornton in the pros. Just bad. He just made the Chiefs, by the way. Just made the roster, Tyquan Thornton. Probably going to play in the Super Bowl this year. How about the next pick? How about let's go to the 4th round here. Next pick after Marcus Jones, I should say. How about Jack Jones? Remember him? God, I loved Jack Jones. Bit of an off-the-field problem in college, a couple of them. So the Pats got him, 4th round, take a waiver on him. Will be the right place for him. We've seen this plenty of times before, right? Will be the right place for him. And for a little while, it looked great. Looked like such a bargain, man. Had a great first year. And in his career, he's still playing. He has 7 picks, 4 touchdowns. That's a playmaker, man. Including a couple of pick sixes for the Patriots. Remember, this one was over Alan Lazard and picking it off and taking it back to the house against the Packers. Picked off Aaron Rodgers, took him clean to the cleaners. It was all good, man. It was all good. Until he brought a loaded handgun into the airport. That is not advised. Not advised. And Jack Jones is still bouncing around, but who would have thunk it? The guy who had all these problems off the field in college continued to have them in the pros playing for the Patriots. He's lucky that Netflix lawyer got him off, hopefully just in the court of law. And then after that, they said, all right, we need some more. We need some more skill positions, because then they took not one but two running backs to bolster their skill positions, ready to phase out Damian Harris and find support for the new franchise, Ramondre Stevenson. They're going to be a tough run between the tackles kind of team. Then again, I don't think the combined rushing total of 152 yards from Kevin Harris and Pierre Strong in their Patriots careers was exactly what they had in mind. I don't think so. And they tried with those guys for years to see if they could become anything for this running attack. They didn't. And just to add to the excellent Cole Strange pick, they decided to go back down the well for some more offensive linemen, because it's already worked so far with that great Strange pick. Drafted two more of them in the late rounds, Andrew Stuber from Michigan, the tackle, and Chasen Hines, the guard from LSU. And they were consistent. You got to give them that. They both spent 2022 on the IR and were cut before the 2023 season. Neither one played a regular season game for the New England Patriots. Neither. And I've buried the lead a little bit, because in the middle of this draft was where it got really interesting for the Patriots, when they drafted Western Kentucky quarterback Bailey Zappi in the 5th round. Who remembers Zappy Hour? Where were you for that? One Bears defensive back falls down, and Bailey Zappi is the savior. The next year and a half would be filled with Mac Jones versus Bailey Zappi debates, and our fresh wounds of truly some of the darkest days in the history of this once proud franchise, which has had plenty of dark days. Plenty. But once you're debating Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones to be your starting quarterback in the National Football League, you're done. It's over. You've lost it. Once you're debating Bailey Zappi versus Mac Jones to see who will be Tom Brady's replacement, it's done. There's no turning back. It's all over for you, and it's a long way from getting better. And truly, to me, that's what signifies the downfall in this draft. And maybe that's a little harsh on Bailey Zappi, because it's not like the guy was coming in ready to be the starter. But Cole Strange, you draft way off the board in the 1st round. You trade up for a guy who's just fast in Tyquan Thornton. That's it. You draft a couple of other depth linemen. You draft a couple of depth running backs. Draft them, not sign them off the street. You draft them, and you didn't hit on one of those 4 guys. And you're hoping you do hit on 2 of them, because then you're taking a reach at corner and hoping that this kid who was a bit of a head case in college would make up for it in the pros and grow up a little bit. He didn't do that. And yet in the middle of that is Bailey Zappi. Because you get to a point in the next year where the 1st round quarterback you drafted was so bad, and his growth was stunted so horribly by having Matt Patricia and Joe Judge coach him, that you're thinking, well, maybe we can win games in the NFL. Maybe we could make the playoffs if Bailey Zappi is our quarterback. That's where it all gets worse, man. Like that's where I have to sink in my chair a little bit. Because it did get worse. You went from irrelevant to bottom of the barrel. 8 wins in the last 2 seasons. We used to do that in 2 months. And I get it's not going to be Brady again. But it's horrible. And it all starts from this disaster of a draft. This, really the beginning of the end for the Patriots, obviously, is Brady leaving. But it's tough to remember now. They were really close to keeping something going. Not maybe a dynasty, but to keep the contending going 2 years after Brady left, 1 season removed, you had your guy. You were in the playoffs. And you had your quarterback, at least you thought. And you had plenty of opportunity to build momentum off that. And instead, you did this. 10 draft picks. 9 of them no longer on the team. Half of them not even in the league anymore. 7 offensive players who ended up being more offensive than offensive. In fact, you drafted 7 offensive players in that draft, and the best one is Marcus Jones, the cornerback. It's brutal. Just absolutely brutal. Take him to the woodshed kind of draft. It's the kind that gets a legendary coach fired. And that's pretty much what happened. It all stems from that. And sorry to crush your hope, Patriots fans, but the 2024 draft isn't much better. And that was a year and a half ago. It's not much better after that. Drake May, obviously, 3rd overall. That's fine. But other than that, Caden Wallace and Javon Baker are the only ones that are possibly going to be suiting up week 1. And I say possibly because they're on the roster right now. They made final cutdowns, but the Patriots are going to go to the waiver wire here. And Javon Baker looking decent in special teams. I don't know if that's enough to keep him on the team. Caden Wallace, maybe, because their offensive line's still pretty bad. Jalen Polk, 2nd round, IR. No guarantee to make the team anyway. Layden Robinson, done. Joe Milton, gone. Jaheim Bell, wasted. Marcellus Dial, IR. Drake May, that's it. Of guys you can actually count on this year. Hopefully Caden Wallace. But Javon Baker, he ain't making any people in the wheelchair stand up anytime soon. That ship has sailed. 23 was okay. Just, I guess, because people are wondering. Christian Gonzalez, Keon White, Marte Mapu. We'll see if he survives the waiver wire. Keishon Butte, Pop Douglas. It's not a bad draft. It's really not. Considering the one before it and the one after it. Did have Chad Ryland and City So in that draft, though, 23. But it all starts from the 2022 draft. I know it was nice and fun for years for NFL analysts to talk about how bad a drafter Bill Belichick was. In reality, he wasn't. But in 22, yeah, that was as bad as it got. That could be the worst Patriots draft ever, let alone the worst Bill Belichick draft ever. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. It's completely free, and we're talking nothing but Boston sports live on YouTube every weekday, high noon Eastern time, and then available wherever you get your podcasts as well. So was this the worst draft Belichick ever had? Was this the beginning of the end? Let me know in the comment section below. Like, subscribe. I'm your host, Cam Stewart. Zach Burke keeps us on the air 5 days a week. Check out the other videos on the channel talking Patriots, Bruins, Red Sox, everything else going on in the world of Boston sports, so you don't have to touch that sports talk radio dial.